So I love that word cloud. Are there other traits that you would replace with the stereotypical traits that came up on that word cloud?
Yeah, along with nerdy and the big glasses, geeky was another one that I didn't like. They just seem like more derogatory terms. I am friends with people who very happily identify as a nerd or a geek, and they are very
That's me.
proud of it and they own it, and that is totally fine. But like in general, I perceive those words personally as being potentially derogatory, potentially hurtful. If someone called someone else a nerd or a geek, I don't think everyone's gonna be like, with a smile on their face, like, "Oh, thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to be called today." No, just like any normal person, or again, going back to what defines normal, right? But like anybody, what I wanted to try to see, like I said, for words that I would love to have seen be replaced is me or anybody, or instead of maybe like super smart, just passionate or determined or dedicated, because that is true. You do need to be dedicated if you need to go into the lab on a Saturday to feed your mice for an experiment or to work up a reaction. There is a degree of dedication that you need to devote to the field. There's sometimes long hours. And that is definitely something that is one of the skills that you need to be a successful scientist. But, these are general skills, right? Being determined or being passionate, that's great for being a scientist, but that's true for anything that you want to be. And I think that that's one of the words that I would replace are the words that I think are very specifically targeted toward a very particular type of individual who does science. And I would love to see these words be much more diverse and friendly and just supportive and empowering of everyone who just wants to pursue science. Just having many more words that are all encompassing of good traits to have for anything that you want to pursue.
That's awesome.
Yeah, literally. And then maybe that's what some of my students meant when they literally said me. Like it's literally everything that you are and what is within you, the inner strength that's coming from you.
Exactly. So then you've already given like a lot of advice to like our viewers and listeners, but do you have any last encompassing advice for our middle to high schoolers that are listening or watching?
As far as other advice that I would give in general, not being afraid of failure, I would say is one of the biggest life lessons that I learned and something that I struggled with a lot. So when I went to school, as long as I studied hard, I could get an A on the test. And it got to the point where like if I got like a 98% on a math test, I would be like disappointed at myself. Like, I should have gotten 100, right? So first of all, Jen and I were talking about grades earlier. Grades are not really as useful as a metric in determining your self-worth as you might think right now. Right now, it might seem like it's grades are like all or nothing. And unfortunately, that is something that undergraduate like that colleges will look at. They will look at how well you performed in school. So to some degree, grades are something that you still need to care about. So I don't want you to leave this podcast or this YouTube video to be like, I don't care about my grades. No, they're still important. Still try very, very hard. Make sure that you always put forth your best effort. But I think that that's exactly that. Putting forth your best effort is the most important thing that you need to become comfortable with. So when I was exploring all different aspects of research, when I first started organic chemistry, oh my goodness, I would mess up reactions all the time. I would drop glassware, I would spill things would be dumped over, and I would have to start over for my reactions when I was setting up experiments in the lab. I would fail all the time. And I honestly like hated it, and I that's a very strong word, I don't use it often, but in the beginning I would call my parents and I'm like, I don't think research is for me, like I just knocked something over again, like I set myself back like 2 months, like I am so frustrated, like this is not what I thought it was going to be. Like it's definitely not the same as studying for a test and performing. In research, you're doing things that no one knows the answer to. That's why it's called research. We don't know what the answer is. So we're all doing cutting edge things. No one knows if it's even going to be successful or not. Like it might not even be able to be something that's successful. It's literally a shot in the dark sometimes. And I'll still never forget I was like so disappointed at myself. I like was working so hard to get caught up on something that I had messed up in the lab right before 4th of July weekend. And I guess I was like a little too excited. I was going to go home to see my parents. I was doing research over the summer at that time. I was going to go home to see my parents. I'm the only child. So I was going to go home to see them right around the 4th of July weekend. And I spilled something in the lab and it was all of my product. I didn't think about like
Oh.
like just having like a gram of my product go to the next step. I took all 10 grams of it and just pushed it forward and I messed something up. And that precious product had taken me, I think at that point, 6 months to make. And so I spilled everything and 6 months of work just went down the drain. Literally, there was like a sink on the
Oh,
side where I made my mistake. I was crying. Yeah, it was not a good day or like week. I was mad the whole time week.
yeah.
And I will never forget, my dad gave me a card. He sent it to me in the mail the first week I came back after I recuperated from spending, 1st July with my parents. I remember I was watching the fireworks. I was just like still like so disappointed. I was like, oh my goodness. And my dad sent me this card and it had all these inspirational quotes that he wrote down or like inspirational things that happened in science. How most of science happened by accident. Like Charles
Yeah.
Goodyear, right, with the tire, he accidentally left this, now we know as like the rubber mixture to make a tire. He left that chemical composition on the stove for too long. He forgot to turn off the stove and then it turned into the rubber that we now know is a tire. So he basically just filled this card with all sorts of inspirational quotes and inspirational messages from life's lessons and history of science and all sorts of things that was just so inspirational that it kept me going. And it was like, all right, I'll give it another try. I can do this. And I pushed forward. So that's just one example. But you will fall down sometimes, even when even when you are taking classes, whatever your major is or your field of study, you are going to get so immersed into your discipline that it will be a lot of things that you will never have been exposed to previously from your junior high or high school. There's only so much that your years of schooling will be able to prepare you for before you get into a very specific discipline. And so even sometimes in classes, you might not perform as well on an exam as you want to. But again, just remembering that you as a human being, your self-worth is not tied to your grades. It's not tied to whether you did the experiment or the reaction successfully, and just not being afraid to try it again. Every time you get knocked down, just pick yourself up, try it again. It's much easier said than done. But if you are able to have that degree of resilience and to that degree of just not being afraid, there's definitely a degree of courage to becoming a scientist, but that goes for anything else that you choose to do in your life as well. That's definitely my most important piece of advice. Just don't be afraid to fall or fail. You will get to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You will make it to the other side eventually. Just know that everyone goes through it and that you're not alone.
I think that's great advice and something that I always tell myself, and it might have even been in your card from your dad, is that penicillin was a mistake. The guy who discovered penicillin, he was growing bacteria on a plate and it got contaminated. And he just happened to notice that where the fungi was, there was a distinct ring of where the bacteria had died. And thought that was interesting. So, you know, even when you make a mistake or you think you failed, it could also result in something really amazing. So,
It really can. It really, really can. Exactly. What defines a failure, right? It could actually be the greatest next success. It could be some groundbreaking discovery. Exactly.
sort of back to the I am a scientist concept. When did you first have that moment of I am a scientist? Was it a specific moment or was it this gradual experience?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it was a gradual shift for me, honestly. I really never had some moments where I was doing science and realized that I am a scientist. But literally, anyone tuning in right now, you are scientists right now. And that's something that you're probably like struggling to grasp. Like, what? Me as a sixth, seventh, or eighth grader? I'm a scientist. You are literally a scientist is defined by anybody who does science. And you are doing that in your classes through, your EYH, Expanding Your Horizons experience. every day, honestly, we are so curious as humans. We are naturally curious about the world around us, and doing just simple experiments around the house, like seeing what liquid is more dense than another liquid. But just being able to experiment with things around the house, we are all scientists, whether we major in it or not. So just that is one of our fundamental traits as human beings. We're just naturally curious and want to explore the world around us, and that is a scientist. So yeah, I don't really think that I had a moment, and I was thinking about this before I started teaching, because right now I'm telling all of my students all the time that they are scientists. And I, again, with my scientist spotlights and trying to expand my own students' horizons of what a scientist can look like and act like and behave like, and telling them, you are all scientists right now. I think to get others to believe in themselves and to see themselves as scientists to start with can sometimes be truly so transformational in their own journey as a scientist, and being able to have the confidence to be able to, again, the resilience to keep picking themselves up if they do fall down, and keep exploring science and digging deeper into the unknowns. I think it is really, really so powerful to hear those words of affirmation, like, I am a scientist, I can do this. And especially to have someone tell you that, I think is really, really, at least for me, I think that would have been really helpful to me if my professors and my teachers growing up would tell me, you are all scientists. And maybe some of them did, but it didn't stick with me that much. So I make sure that I tell my own students that a lot. Like, you are already scientists right now. So never put yourself down, never, think that you are unqualified to do what you're doing. You deserve to be here. You belong here. Anyone can look like a scientist. There's no limitations as to who a scientist can be or what they look like. I think just those words of affirmation and telling them that are really important. And so, again, for all of you who are tuning in right now, you are all scientists already.
Exactly. For me, I like to think of it as there's no such thing as unqualified. You just haven't learned how to do it yet. Just keep that in mind, guys. You're still learning. Keep asking questions
I
and you'll
love
get there.
I love that. Exactly. It's only onward and upward from here, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. I love that.
For our last question, it's our silly question. We always end on this. What's the goofiest thing you've done in the name of science?
Okay. Well, going into the goofiest things that I've done. All right. So first, I need to set the scene a little bit, because this is, I've already debriefed to Jenna on this. So Jenna's going to help explain this weird fad of planking. So planking took its most popular peak in internet. It was an internet sensation at first, I believe, right, Jenna?
I just remember there was a bunch of pictures, and I know it took off in my high school when I was a senior in high school, and I would see kids doing it any and everywhere. And I would see kids doing it outside of high school. And it was always just a moment of, okay, you go. Like, I don't get
Exactly. All
it,
right.
but
So
okay.
yeah, exactly. So okay, so let's take a step back and define what it is. So planking is the idea that you as a human transform your body into a wooden plank type of layout. So essentially, as a human, you assume the role
The
of a wooden plank, and you just essentially lay down as a wooden plank would just be just flat out anywhere. And the weirder the place, the better, as from what I was able to understand. The internet can get a little weird sometimes, but at least from what I was able to discern, that's how it works. So you can be planking on your kitchen counter, you could be planking on an escalator at the mall, you could be planking in the middle of a grocery store aisle, you could be planking on a street lamp. This one's like parkour planking. This is like
yeah.
serious athletic ability of this plank right now. Look at that form. I mean, center of gravity, how he's able to hold himself in a straight line like that. That's
Yeah,
definitely some
good
core
core
strength,
muscles.
right? Exactly. Planking as you are about to board an airplane. So this was all the rage, as Jenna said, when she was a senior in high school. This one, it might have also existed when I was a senior in high school, but I remember my freshman year of college, that was like the biggest thing. Everyone was planking everywhere. And so I also participated in the fad, although I went planking. So Plancking. So Planck's constant is a chemistry concept. It's a constant that we use. And so this was like a big thing for all the science people. We didn't just go planking as in like Planking, but we added the C in there to be like Planck's constant. So we thought we were so cool at the time. So I went planking in my chemistry lab. Don't try this at home or in your own chemistry lab when you're taking chem in high school or, later on in your journeys. Well, honestly, I think it's pretty safe as long as there are no chemicals around. And there wasn't. It was an empty bench that I was planking in front of. I was like on like a stool or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So that is probably the top goofy thing that I have done as a scientist. And I own up to it because I still think it was like one of the most fun things that I did in the lab. Yes. I also would do like some music videos with my friends when I was like the only one left in the lab with just one of my other lab mates at night. But unfortunately, I don't have any, well, probably fortunately for my own job security, that I don't have any documentation of that to share with you. But yeah, this one was something that I do have on camera that I wanted to share.
I love it. I always love when people share these.
Right? Yeah, it's really all about the fads.
It was definitely a weird time.
It was a weird time. It was definitely a weird time.
Thank you so much for all your advice, Lauren. I really loved talking about how to establish, mentorship support systems and, what it means to be a scientist and kind of dismantling those stereotypes and those negative words. I thought that was really powerful. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and talk about all of that and answering our questions and just talking about your journey to science, because that was really cool and engaging. So I hope the listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you would like to know more about EYH, please go to our website at eyh.cornell.edu, where you can learn more about EYH. You can submit questions there, and you can explore more about our previous programming. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will find a link to our website in the description below. Also, as Lauren has mentioned, you will find an email address link there, so you can submit questions directly to that as well. Thank you for listening and watching. Make sure to subscribe to get notified for new content. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.